Right, I'm using an airbrush and brushwork on this wallet. So the airbrush I'm using is the Badger Renegade Chrome. You might notice I've put my trigger pad on it, which is what I always do now. I'm going to explain that a little bit further actually. I feel quite strongly about the trigger pads on my airbrushes. When you get standard airbrush from the factory, whether it's from Badger, Iwata, Harder and Steenbeck, Pache, anybody, the trigger I find is always too low. It's too low, and it's just a disc. It's basically it's a disc, and for something that you're going to be pressing and pulling back on throughout your artwork, I think it should just be more comfortable. So what I've been doing now for over 10 years is adding a pad to the top of the trigger. Now I've tried different profiles, different shapes, different materials, but this is the most comfortable I've come up with so far, and this is the one that I've attached to all my airbrushes now. It's basically, I've got a hole punch, or that sometimes they call it a wad punch, and I've punched out a piece of the black foam packing that comes in the airbrush box that you get, and I've punched that out. I've curved the top of it with a scalpel, and then what I've done is I've cut out an oval of soft leather, and I've glued that on top. Now what that does is it gives me a lovely wide surface. It rolls back with my finger. I've got no that front edge on the standard factory airbrush, factory trigger. It just gets in the way of your finger. And the higher you make this trigger, the more control you've got, because you can actually pull back smaller amounts to get more detail. I mean, I'd already like a trigger up here really, but obviously you're not going to be able to use it. Your finger couldn't reach there. But if you did that, you can make more minute trigger movements, or rather you can make longer trigger movements, and you'll make a smaller movement down here, which makes really fine detail work much easier. So if you can build this up by about 10mm, it does help in your detail work. And that style of trigger, you can see the amount of surface area I've got for my finger. It's so much nicer. So if you want to give that a go, you could paint all day with this and your finger wouldn't feel anything. I guess it's like a bit of not a very good analogy really, is trying to drive without shoes on. It's, you know, you just get you want some kind of a pad, I think, between your finger and the trigger. So that's what I do to all my airbrushes. Just want to explain that. I've had a few people asking me about it, so there you go. Obviously what I've done here as well, I've been through this before, but I'll do it. I may as well do it now. I just cut the handle back on all my airbrushes, and I fit a bit of rubber. Sometimes you might have seen a yellow ear plug that I use, and it I can just pull the needle in and out, and if I want to wipe anything off it or pull it back to lubricate it later on, I can do all that without removing the handle. It's not a great pain to remove the handle, but it is when you now and again if you want to clean it while you're painting. So that's what I do on all my airbrushes. So this is the Renegade Chrome by Badger. I'll be using that, and now I'll go through the brushes that I'm going to use. I've got a selection of brushes that I use. I find for the fine line stuff, a sable brush is nice. This isn't this is a cheap sable brush, but I find sable works really nice and soft, because we're going to be using relatively thin paint, and it draws a fine line with a sable brush. For laying out initially the white, I tend to go for a sort of a stiffer synthetic brush, so that I can work the paint into the surface. I'm not after any detail, so that's okay, because some of these synthetic brushes, the end of the brush is quite sort of blunt, which works well for the initial layout. These are also good for blending the paint out while it's still wet. And then I've got various fan brushes, which I use exclusively really for blending out the paint. So it's sable and synthetic really. A really nice brush as well, which I haven't got here, is a filbert brush, which is a sort of a rounded flat brush. They're really good for blending out your brushwork. So different brushes I use. You don't have to go mad on the brushes. It really doesn't matter what kind you get. You'll find which ones work best for you, and some work best for hair, or you know, even things like nostrils or around the eyelids and things like that. You'll grab your favourite brush. So just a selection of brushes that I use. The paint I'm going to be using today on this in this wallet is Trident. I've used it before on wallets. It's great stuff. It's got a nice intense white, and the black's very dark as well. So you get a really nice contrasty image. So I'm going to be using the Trident black and white. I'm going to be using Trident's reducer. I always recommend using the correct reducer, the manufacturer's reducer with the paint. There's no point in, you know, trying somebody else's, or you don't know what's going to happen. So I've got the Trident reducer here. I've also got some of their transparent base that I'll use as well, and I've got my Liquitex slow dry blending medium, which I'm going to mix in with the paints so that I can blend out the brushwork with a dry brush. What I might try and do as well is see how well the transparent extender works, maybe instead of the blending medium. So we'll see how that works out. But so for this project, we're going with the Trident paint. I've just made a nice mug of tea, which should get rid of my gravelly voice. This is the palette. I just wanted to mention the palette. It's a cheap palette, but I like this style of palette because you can keep your paint, if you squirt your paint out or drip your paint out into one of these wells or something, if you want to better use it the next day or even the next week, you can simply cover it over with some masking tape, and it'll keep it fresh for when you want to paint next. So that's my favourite style of palette. Just made of plastic. Probably get them for about £3 or £4 various places. So something else I like to use in conjunction with the airbrush and the brushes. I guess since I'm going to do this video from start to finish, I might as well tell you everything that I'm doing really. We'll make it a full-blown video. These two sheets of paper I've got here, this is just standard dead cheap photocopier inkjet paper. I use this to make the stencils. You're not wasting your money on any expensive paper. There's no point if you're just going to cut it about with a scalpel. What you don't get with this is a great printout. For detail, you want to go with some proper, I like to go for heavyweight matte inkjet paper, Ilford, something like that. You do get a far better image. You'll get every single detail in that. You can see even from this, in the bad light in here, you've got so much more detail in this sheet than the bottom sheet, simply because of the paper. So I've got an example here as well, actually, of that's just your cheap paper, and that's your inkjet paper. No comparison. Also, what I do as well, if you've got Photoshop, you don't have to go expensive. You don't have to get the £700 Photoshop. A lot of people have copies. I don't like going for copies. I'd rather go for a legitimate version of Photoshop Elements. Elements has got more than enough that you'll ever need to do any of this kind of stuff. If you go into the adjust the lighting, you can pull out all the hair detail. There are different settings in Photoshop, and it's just brilliant for doing that. So print your image out, your detail image out on some heavyweight matte proper inkjet card, and you can't go wrong. Right, I've got my black and white picture of Lemmy. First thing I do is I'm going to cut out the brightest sections, and I'm going to use this as my stencil layout design. So I think I'll start with the ear, because that's one of the brightest areas. Don't have to be super accurate with this, but it's all going to look very patchy to begin with. It's simply to lay the portrait out, really. I'll just put these bits to one side just in case you need to use them later on. I don't think you will, but just the brightest areas, like, just follow the shadows around as best you can. It doesn't matter if you go over or under, it's all going to be covered up with the airbrushing and the brushwork, so just lift each piece out as you go along, and we'll just end up with a very sort of basic stencil. So I'll carry on with this and I'll be back in a minute. Right, I've cut out quite a few sections on this face. Got both ears, all around the beard line, anything really bright I've cut out. I cut out the eyes, eyelids. I might cut a little bit more now, just looking at it actually, just the bags under the eyes. I might just cut those out. And I'll use this, and then what I'll do is I'll come back and I'll cut a little bit more out, and we'll just keep going until there's not much left of the paper at all, really. Quite a good thing to do sometimes. If you want to keep this all together, if you just keep cutting areas out, you're going to end up with nothing to keep it all together. So quite a good thing sometimes to cut around the nose and leave it as a flap. Then you can drop this down, you can lift this up rather, paint it, drop it back down again, and then lift up one of the other areas. So you're just sort of keeping it all together. So I'll use this now on the wallet. We'll just lightly spray some reduced white just to lay the design out, and then I'll carry on and cut bits out as I go along. Right, we've got our new wallet. This is a black wallet. There are loads and loads of different wallets around, obviously. Trifold, bifold. This is just a really nice sort of style of wallet that I've come across. It's got a flap inside for credit cards and all that kind of thing. So this is just a nice design, almost sort of a standard one that I do now, but get them in tan, brown, or this black. Generally for the portraits, black and white portraits, obviously the black's the best. So first of all, what I do is I've got some methylated spirits on some kitchen towel, and I'm going to wipe over the surface to remove any wax, grease, any surface finish that they put on it at the factory before it leaves, just so that we can make sure that the surface is as clean as possible for the paint to stick to. You don't want it coming off, obviously, so there's not much coming off here. Some wallets you'll get a load of black coming off. All that is it's the colouring they put on the surface. So you just keep going, really. The surface you'll see will become really matte, which is a good thing, obviously. You just want to know that your paint's got the best possible chance of staying put. There you go, there's more and more coming off as we go. So I'll just carry on with this and then we'll start painting. This is stage one. Basically this is what's left of the stencil. I have to cut in various sections out, and then you can't help but sort of make a mess of it anyway, so I won't be using this again. It's all airbrush and brush after this. To be honest, there aren't many portraits you'll do where you've actually got to cut out the warts. So have I mentioned this is Lemmy? This is Lemmy from Motorhead, so I'll be back in a minute and show you the next stage. This is the sort of stage at the painting where you think, oh no, it's just not going to work out, and you've just got to keep plugging away. It will work out. It always works out, but there's always a stage, and this is it. Earlier stages doesn't look that much like the person you're trying to paint, and you've just got to keep plugging away. When all the white's done, then it's time for the black. When you start doing the black is the point that you start to sort of get a more realistic image. So just keep going at it, and it will turn out, so don't worry about it. Okay, slowly working away at it. One of the hardest things you'll find is the lips. If you don't get the lips right, it just won't look like the person you're trying to do. You just play around the lips. They will gradually get there. They look terrible to begin with, and then you'll slowly start to pull all the details out, and you will sort of fiddle around, a bit of paintbrush, just move your paint around, airbrush and everything, and just try and get those lips to look, like they're sunk in the middle and sticking out the top and all that kind of stuff. It will come together. It just takes a while. Same as the nose. The nose can look really blunt and sort of just two-dimensional, but it just gradually comes together. It's just taking time to bring all this detail out with the whites, and even sometimes you think you've gone over a line too hard. That just does get buried underneath other layers, so don't worry too much about that. So just keep plugging away until you've got your white finished. I'm gradually pulling more and more of the detail out with the white. I'm not sure how far I want to go with the white really before I get to the black, but what I've noticed is that the paint in certain areas, sometimes when as it's drying off, it kind of pulls the dye out slightly. It kind of goes sort of almost greeny. Well, once you go over with the second coat of paint with your brush or whatever, it seals and it's okay. So I think it might be the reducer in the paint brings out maybe the dye in the leather. I'm not sure. What I've done anyway, I've got this far with the white, obviously. What I've done is I've put a very, very light coat of the satin varnish over as an intercoat, really, just to seal that, and then I'll carry on with the brushwork on top of that, and it won't reactivate it at all. So this is as far as I've got so far. You can see he's obviously got sort of pursed lips, or you've almost got to kind of imagine that sort of look he's going for, and try and get the lips right with that as well. It's kind of an aggressive, in-your-face look. So that's what you're going to go for with the lips. I mean, the lips are sort of pursed around a cigarette. You've got to kind of get that. I'm not there yet, but as I start to bring the blacks in and everything, it should come through. So I'm not exactly sure at what point to put the wicker work in the hat. Maybe that'll come later, or maybe I'll do it next. I don't know yet. So I'll just keep going, and we'll see how it progresses. I think I'm going to call it a day with the white now, and then we'll move on with the black. I'm quite happy with the way the hat turned out. It's just a sort of a nylon brush with not too much paint on it really. So just giving the idea of sort of the wicker sort of Stetson. You don't have to go too far with that kind of thing really. I think it's just as long as that's kind of surrounding the face anyway. I'm not too bothered about the mottled background either. I quite like that random look. I might intensify a bit later on, but for now I'm just going to go in with the black now and we'll define the eyes, beard, jacket, shadow detail, all that kind of stuff. Well, I'm going to attempt to capture some of this blending. There's a good piece now just around the, just under the hat where it meets his forehead, so I'm just going to, I don't know if you can see this, I'm brushing in a line all the way around. Because it's got the blending medium mixed in with it, I'm going to feather that shadow out now. So we've actually only got one hard edge. And that works really well for getting a sharp edge without using a scalpel or masking tape or anything, or masking rather. This black with the blending medium is working absolutely fantastically. It was really nice. I think the initial bleeding through sort of with the colour from the other, I think that's just I just need to put an intercloak clear behind it, because now it's just going on fantastic. It's really blending easily. It's not sinking in or anything. I can basically get the shadows as subtle as I want, or I can get harsh edges if I don't put so much blending medium in with it. So it's, at the moment, it's really working great. So I'm just going to crack on and push out some of the shadows, etc. It's just working really nice, the black, so I'm really pleased with the black. So well, I'll carry on and get back to you. So far this is all brushed. Now what I'm going to do is going to round all the contours of the cheek, round by the chin, neck and everything. I'm going to do that now with the airbrush. It should sort of just bring everything together a bit more, and then I'll just carry on with some of the brush work on the I will come in later on, I think, with the white, but I'll just carry on with the black for now. Just really pleased with the way the Trident black's working with this Liquitex blending medium. It's brilliant. So I'll just carry on. Oh, this is with the airbrush as well. You can see I've blended in the shadow coming down from the brim of the hat, and sort of giving it the face a more 3D look with the blended airbrush work. I'll carry on with the airbrush a little bit more, but I'm also going to come back in with the white and just bring some of the highlights out, perhaps around the edge of the nostrils, cheeks a little bit, and perhaps the edges of the ears, and perhaps define a little bit more of the mottled sort of throat, neck rather. Just bring a little bit more detail out, and then I think that could be it. Okay, I wasn't sure when to finish, but I really think I'm going to finish now. Very pleased with it. I'm going to leave the top's blown out because he was the sun was behind him. So that's completely just stark white. So I'm gonna leave it kind of as a more of a sort of contemporary sort of background to it, but we're just focusing on the face. So everything else, it really is sort of just a random sort of blurred, straggly hair. I think it looks pretty good at the moment. So I'm gonna leave it where it is now. I could keep going on. I could keep going over another 2 hours. I'm just not going to do. I'm going to leave it now. I'm very pleased with it. What I'll do now is I'll put about 3 coats of the Liquitex satin varnish on, and that'll protect everything, and then it's completed.